everybody, welcome to another episode of Friends Talking Nerdy. This is Tim Jousma, and with me I've got Her Holiness, the Reverend Tracy. Say hi.
Hi, it is I, the Reverend Tracy.
And you had the perfect actress pose there and everything.
It's a shame we don't put this video anywhere. You can see my wonderful tapestries in my home.
There you go. How's your week been?
It's actually been fairly good. If we want to jump into topics, kind of the bigger thing was I got to see a really awesome wrap-up to a show I enjoy, and then, just still kind of living around a pandemic and surviving an election year. Super fun, lots of people arguing.
Yeah, what a world we live in. But you mentioned a show. We talked about it a little bit, The Good Place, but fill us in. Tell us more about it. Why do you love that show?
Yeah, so if you haven't heard about this wonderful show, The Good Place, it's one of the few that I've actually kind of followed. I accidentally discovered it during the first season. I don't usually look for new shows very often, but this one appealed to me. But they just put up their fourth and final season on Netflix, and it shares writers with other shows that I love, so I shouldn't be surprised that I loved it. Parks and Rec, The Office, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and the little quick synopsis that I'll give you from the internet, because I'm going to try to not do spoilers if I ever talk about a show, especially new ones. Like, if it's wrapped years ago and you haven't caught up, that's your fault. But since this one just released, I want to give people some time. But Eleanor Shellstrop finds herself in the afterlife. She's both relieved and surprised that she's made it into the good place, but it doesn't take long for her to realize that she's there by mistake. So 4 seasons of hijinks ensuing and some interesting twists and turns. They actually cover a lot of ethical philosophy type topics. Many of the seasons are actually based off of certain plays and books by famous philosophers. They actually constantly reference Kant, especially in the end. And then, especially what I felt, obviously there was a lot of religious and ethical philosophy discussed through it. We're dealing with the afterlife. And even questions like what makes a person good, etc. But, near the end, it really, to me, even kind of took almost a political commentary, as you eventually do meet, the bad place people and then the dead opposite of the good place people. One of them seems to kind of have a very conservative reason to not want to change certain things. This is just how it's been done. Whereas another side is, so open to everything, they can't seem to make a decision. So really good, tight 4 seasons. I'm pretty sure I felt that they said they were only going to do 4 seasons, and I love it when a show just sticks to that. They don't pontificate, they don't make it jump the shark, they don't make it last for 10 years. Not everything needs to last 10 years. Beautiful story, great characters that, I honestly cried at one point, so that doesn't happen very often, because I'm a heartless beast. So can't recommend enough. Yes.
Well, what about that show intrigued you when you first watched? You mentioned not being a big one on binging shows or new shows especially. What caught your eye about this?
Well, I really like the actress that plays Eleanor Shellstrop, and I'm really embarrassed that I'm not thinking of it right now.
Kristen Bell?
Yes, thank you, Kristen Bell. I saw her and went, oh, hey, she's in a show. And then Ted Danson?
Yep.
Is it that? Yes, okay, thank you. I always fuck up his name. But Ted Danson, loved him from Cheers. So I was, super happy to see him in something again. And I love that he aged well. He still has that charming smile, and he's got a great personality. And I loved in his acting ability in this, really dead on good work. So commending him again just for, being great at his job. And I do like quirky, funny characters, and Eleanor kind of fits that bill. It's really funny because she's from Arizona, and they make fun of a lot of Arizona and people from Arizona in a playful way. But yeah, I saw those 2 people and went, why not? I didn't even really know that it was written by the same people as Parks and Rec and The Office until I was looking into it. When I was awaiting the last season to come out, and there was a lot of spin-up coming and a lot of articles being written, that's where I started to notice, oh, well, of course I would have loved it, because I love Parks and Rec and The Office and Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
I have never seen any of those shows. None of them.
Any of them? Oh
Any
my
of them.
gosh. Any of them? Wow. Okay. I
Yeah.
mean, you might like The Office. I mean, even though you haven't worked in one, there's still some relatable humor there.
I try The Office. A friend of mine let me. He tagged me onto his Plex server. I guess you have the ability to like add people on. So I watched like an episode or two of the first season of The Office, and just not for me at all. I mean, but granted, I mean, my comedy tends to be more zany, more hijinky, a lot of physical comedy, if you will. Nothing too subtle for me. If there's a pie in the face, I'm probably going to be there. So shows like that, the more slow build ones, like Arrested Development too. I haven't seen that, and I've heard that they did stuff on that show like do a setup for a joke in season one and then pay it off like 3 seasons later, and I don't have the energy for that.
Well, you know what? You actually might have an appreciation for this show. And the reason I say that, and it's early enough, I don't feel like it's a spoiler, but she realizes she doesn't belong there. And one of the things that happens is the good place like freaks out, right? So she's at this good place, realizes she doesn't belong there, and there's this big cocktail party, and she does like all of this just asinine, bad person shit. Like one of the things she does is just like there's all of this shrimp, but for some reason she's just going around and like taking it, just like stuffing it in pockets. Like she doesn't need to do this. She's like drinking to the point of being obnoxious. So like the next day there's like giant fish or shrimp like going through the sky. Like there's huge elaborate manifestations of all of her inappropriate behavior from the night before. So there is kind of a little bit of that ridiculously that you may find appeal to.
I mean, maybe I'll check it out, but again, I'm pretty particular with what I like, so who knows if I'll end up liking it, but
yeah. I mean, well, I like a show that sneakily teaches you something while being entertaining.
Yeah, and me fart jokes that's my level of humor sometimes. So. Anyway, I've been having fun this week. Last week we started up our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/ftnerdy. Professor Aubrey ended up purchasing a PS4, and we got some pretty good games off of that. So I thought one way to kind of hopefully get some involvement with the show would be to set up that Twitch channel. And I've been rediscovering my love for the Lego games. And I know you've played a few as well. But tell me what you like about them.
Oh my gosh, because basically I got into games for a while there as a kid, and then I took such a break from them that I felt like I had such a learning gap in the ability to play the more complex games. So when I first got an Xbox again in my life as an adult, I wanted something that was kind of fun, but not like, if any of you, I don't know if you've ever played Assassin's Creed, for example, but anybody out there that's played the Assassin's Creed games will tell you it gets progressively harder, and like it's easier if you've played all of the prequel games. So I felt like video games kind of moved on in that sense in general. So I figured, well, it's kind of for kids, so it's not very hard to navigate and figure out how to do all of these buttons I now suddenly have from the last thing I played being a PlayStation. It helped me with the learning curve. It was fun. It was slower paced. Like it wasn't just hitting you with a bunch of enemies and like, hey, let's do this tutorial for 20 minutes before you can beat the first boss.
Right. Yeah. Kind of in the same boat. I remember when I first met my ex-wife, I had a PlayStation 2 at the time, and around the time I started letting my 2-year-old start to play Grand Theft Auto Vice City was the time I stopped playing video games for a while. It's kind of frowned upon when you let a 2-year-old shoot hookers,
Oh, yeah, and especially you got to give them that talk before they take the hooker in the first car.
Yeah,
remember, you kill them after, so you get all of the money.
All the money back, yeah, and you get that extra buff and points. But it had been a few years. The kids were a little older, so we ended up buying a PlayStation 3, and I came across a little game called Lego Star Wars, and just instantly fell in love with it. I mean, because what I like about those games, to your point, they are easy enough that your 95-year-old great grandmother could show up and easily get the gist of the game within 5 minutes time, but there's enough of a difficulty of the game that keeps you enthralled on that just keeps you interested in it. And depending on the game, whether it's Lego Star Wars, I mean, you got the John Williams music playing throughout. If it's stuff like the Lego Batman series, which turned into the Lego DC superheroes, I love playing the the DC one and just flying around as Superman, because the John Williams Superman theme's playing, and also it does it with Wonder Woman too. It's like Wonder Woman, you're flying around. It is cool.
Nice.
I love that. But do you have any particular favorite games? Lego
Well,
games?
you named the two that I've played. I first got the Batman one, and I think, was the Batman one maybe featured? You know how you can get your Xbox or whatever, and it will come with some starter games? Because I really get the feeling that that's where I got that game. Because, back whenever you'd buy them, I have no idea. I haven't bought a game system in so fucking long. I wouldn't even tell you what's normal these days. But, you'd have, like, the Xbox that's more for the kids, so it'll come with these two more kiddie games. And then you've got the one that came with, like, Call of Duty or what the fuck ever, and then, things like that. So I obviously got the child one, because I need child safety. And, I'm like, 80% sure that's how I found that one. But then I did go out of my way and I bought not just the Star Wars game, I bought like the entire saga, because they had a special edition where it had all of them in one. So you just kind of went to this main room and you could choose which Lego Star Wars version you wanted to play.
Yep.
So that one was really cool. And it was funny because I got it to try to sneakily learn about the movies, because I hadn't watched them, didn't really want to watch them, but wanted to at least understand the references people were making around me, so I figured it was a compromise.
And not a bad one. Not a bad one. Speaking of Lego Star Wars, they're actually, I believe, later this year coming out with a new one. They're calling it Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga. So essentially, it's going to, at the very minimum, be all 9 of the Star Wars films. I don't know if they're going to... I'm assuming they will, but I don't know for sure if they're going to have like side missions, including like Rogue One or any missions that are specific to any of the other movies that were out. But just really, really great games. We actually subscribe to PlayStation has a service called PlayStation Now. Think of it like Netflix for video games. For like
Nice.
$9.99 a month, you can download, or if it's an older game, kind of stream them. And they got a bunch of the Lego games. They got the Lego Harry Potter games. They have the Lego Star Wars: The Complete Saga, the one you had, plus the Lego Star Wars 3 game, which had some levels based on the Clone Wars cartoon. Lego Pirates of the Caribbean, which was actually a game. Lego Indiana Jones, the Lego DC, the Lego Batman and Lego DC games are on there. Just it's one hell of a good deal, and it's just been so much fun playing some games, and being able to put it on Twitch has been definitely an added benefit as well.
Yeah, I mean, maybe hopefully soon we can work it out where maybe I can come play and we can have a Friends Talking Nerdy Twitch episode.
Yeah, that is definitely on the books. You're welcome over anytime. Yeah, I mean, like I said, we got a number of games here, of course. I tried to do since I started it, I've been trying to do something every day. So most of the time, it's just videos of me playing the video games and then me cursing out the video games as well. That's something.
So a standard Twitch channel.
Pretty much, yeah, because I mean, Professor Aubrey's learning what my video game persona is like, and apparently it's quite bitchy. Just if things don't go my way, then it's the fault of the game, because of course it is.
See, I haven't unveiled my video game self yet to Mr. Reverend, the Mr. Reverend. But he has seen me. There was a moment, just to share, that he saw that glazed over look I get when you put me behind a pinball machine, because I is a thing that not a lot of people know, because when would it come up? I really love pinball machines. I love playing pinball. I like Super Focus.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like there's a pinball museum somewhere that when all this shit's over and I can figure out like how to go visit places again,
Right.
I'm hoping I can like make something like that happen. But anywho, a little bit of a side note, but
Yeah.
you know, that video game persona, a different human comes out. Like normally I'm very out there and sporadic, but when you put me behind a pinball machine, I'm very focused. And then apparently you become a cursing beast.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, it's just like the Lego games. Like we were playing co-op one time, and well, it's so far it's been worse with the first Lego Harry Potter game, because in co-op and two-player mode, the Lego Harry Potter game has this weird what they call a dynamic camera, to where the camera, instead of just being like one line down the middle, it will kind of like move depending on where your character's going. But the drawback is, if character 1 is on one side, it's going to drag character 2 closer to them and kind of move you around. So if like if you're player 2 trying to do something and it moves, and vice versa as well. So if player 2's on a side, it can screw things up for player 1. It just moves things, and I just got so frustrated, and I was yelling at the screen, calling Hermione a dirty little whore, things like that. Just normal, calm type of things, and Aubrey's like, the fuck, But anyway.
Let's see how wrong that is. Kind of depends on which Harry Potter were you. Like, is this still a small child Hermione, or is she like a bitchy teenager yet? Like...
No, we haven't, for the Lego Harry Potter game. We've just got past year 2, so it was little girl Hermione, and yeah, so bad. But for anybody listening, feel free to join us on Twitch, and it'll be in our Linktree list of links. But you can find us at twitch.tv/ftnerdy. And if you don't even have a video game system, like if you wanted to watch the video, there's a chat on there as well. And Aubrey actually ended up purchasing. This ended up working out well, but she purchased this game called Let's Sing Country that came with a couple of microphones, but the microphones have been very, very good for the online chats and whatnot. So yeah.
So bonus, you got a game and some good mics.
Yep.
So pro tip out there.
Get one of the singing games, yeah. Unfortunately, the singing games you can't do on Twitch. We contemplated it for a second because we got Rock Band 4 as well. But I don't know if the world wants to hear me sing that B-52 song, Love Shack. You don't.
And if so, there's so many karaoke apps, Tim. We can make this happen.
Maybe we'll see. But let's move on to our regular favorite weekly subject here. Our top 5 favorite. Tell us what we are going to be talking about today.
Today we are talking about our top 5 favorite documentaries. And so, how did you do with coming up with 5?
It was a little hard, but I ended up coming up with 5 that I'm comfortable with. And it's because at first I was going through thinking, well, I'll try and pick the best ones instead of going with the flow of the segment here, trying to pick my favorites. Just because something may be my favorite, admittedly, doesn't mean it's the greatest documentary of all time. So once I had that mindset going, I was able to get my list together pretty quickly. But what about you?
Oh, I had a hard time, just because to me this highlighted how much of a documentary nerd I have become, because I have seen just so many that I basically, when I sat down, like, all right, I'm going to think about these. This is going to be easy because holy shit, I like a lot of documentaries.
No, I'll have to fight it out.
So I had to kind of come up with subgenres to help me narrow it down. So I tried to stick with the more current version of something if I could. There were a lot of things where there were like close seconds to things. But I figure I can kind of go into some of that thought process even. And if time allows, possibly a shout out to any like really close seconds. But so yeah, like mostly the ones that resonated with me the most, the ones that I feel like have the most repeat value, or like changed my life kind of in a way.
Yeah. All right, let's do it. Since you were so excited about this, I want to make sure you go first. What is your first choice?
Well, my first choice, I wanted one of them to at least be something that has been made since the chaos of 2020, because we have had so many things going on, and I just love, it's an attribute to like the resources we have now. Like, you don't have to wait years for a documentary to happen on something anymore. And this documentary was on HBO, and it was called After Truth: Disinformation and the Cost of Fake News. It is Andrew Rossi, and he's investigating the ongoing threat caused by the phenomenon of fake news in the United States. It's focusing on the real-life consequences the disinformation, conspiracy theories, and false news stories have on the average citizen, both in an election cycle and for years to come. I really enjoyed it. It really was eye-opening. I know I've at least mentioned once on the show, that I have this idea of putting on your skepticals sometimes when you hear an article. If this thing made any personal belief of mine more firm, it is, especially when it comes to the election and when you're putting your vote in, guys, be an info seeker, not an info consumer, because it really goes into how we got into this slippery slope and how really both sides are kind of imbibing at this point.
Yeah, it's scary too, just seeing people that you would think under normal circumstances to have a good head on their shoulders embrace a lot of there is no reason someone like Alex Jones should have ever had a career. That guy is a nut job. Like a broken clock. He may have a couple of halfway normal, halfway decent points, but the fact that he was allowed for so long to say stuff like the Sandy Hook shooting was a job of the CIA, and that there was no actual school shooting, and that people were crisis hackers or something like that. And then of course what we have out of the White House each and every day, it is. It's to your point too. Yeah, I mean, I do. I find myself on occasion getting caught up in like what they will do, especially for articles that you read online. The title of the article may be splashy, may be in your face, and yet it will also have nothing really to do with the content of the article as well, because the only job of that title was to get you to click on that link so the advertisers can be happy. And just it's sad too, because there are what is really frustrating is that legitimate news organizations like the New York Times and whatnot, a lot of times people can't access it because it's behind a paywall. You only get those 10 free articles a month, and then after you're out of that 10, you gotta pay for it. And I get that they're a business and they gotta make money somehow, but when you have a legitimate news source that is locked behind that paywall, where are people gonna go? They're gonna go to the congregate sites, so like your Huffington Post or the Drudge Report or something like that. And those type of articles are just more people commenting on the news, and they're giving their own personal spin, whether it's pro-conservative or pro-liberal and whatnot. But it is a really dangerous time that we are living in, and I don't know if there's a way to kind of get out of it.
Well, I mean, there is, and I think it really is by spreading knowledge like this, because I think what I really would hope more people would get out of a documentary like this is it goes back to be an info seeker, not an info consumer. Think about when you're at the grocery store. Are you going to make better decisions based off of the ads that are thrown at you, or are you going to make better decisions when you sit down, you take a minute, you research, and you find the thing you actually want? And we're like that with news. I also listen to kind of she's well known in a more hippie type realm. Her name's Sahara Rose, but she's got a really good podcast that she just released. And she talks a lot about like kind of, we've got this really big dichotomy right now where we've got this harsh good and this harsh bad. And like kind of what you have is really a result of the information you are taking in. So if all of your news channels are telling you that there's a war coming and it's doom and gloom, and somebody says, hey, actually, there's all these peace agreements, you're going to think that person is insane because of what you are filling yourself with. So I don't know, be willing to maybe research and find like good sources. I'm a big fan of independent news that's, publicly funded. I very much cherry pick, so I'm not over inundated with just too much news all the time. There's just smarter ways to take it in than just what's being marketed at you, much like other consumer services type things. There's usually a better option than what is being thrown at you. And I'm sorry that we're at that, but really highlighted in this documentary that's where we are right now.
And also, too, I think people have to keep in mind that especially cable news, they are cultivating this us versus them mentality because they know that will keep viewers. And what
sells.
It sells, and that's dangerous too, because I am not a conservative, but I don't think all conservatives are bad just because of what we have in the White House today. I mean, there's proof out there that that's the case with groups like the Lincoln Project. The people that are running that, very much hardcore conservatives. Under normal circumstances, I would not want to financially support them, but they're good people because they see the danger of what we have in the White House today. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. But we shouldn't think of them as enemies in the first place. And that's anyway. I could go into that all day long, I guess. And that's a frustrating part because people so often fall into that. The whole the conservatives are all bad, or all the liberals are socialists and all. It's just shut up. You're just repeating
don't do that. Yeah. Don't all. When you speak in absolutes, there are most people are just going. See, I didn't even say all people. Most people are going to shut down to you. Mm-hmm. Most people, their brains will recognize that an absolute statement is kind of a manipulation. It's really a gaslighting technique, and that's why when somebody comes up to you and says that something is, there is a little piece of your brain that rejects it because it's really kind of your trigger for, am I being gaslighted or gaslit? I don't really know. Gaslit, there we go. Am I being gaslit, or is this new information? So that hesitance you hear, by the fun fact, that hesitance you feel when presented with something new that challenges you is actually a little checker in your brain. You're trying to, you're absorbing something and trying to figure out what it means. So nice. Yeah, resistance feelings are normal. Just be willing to challenge it. Like I've said before, you're allowed to come out on the other side feeling the same way you did before. But, so we don't stay on the political topic too long, what was your first pick for documentaries, Tim?
Okay, my first pick, nothing political about this choice here. This was a documentary that was made, I believe, in 2006. It coincided with the release of the movie Superman Returns, and it's called Look Up in the Sky, The Amazing Story of Superman. It's unfortunately now, but it was narrated by Kevin Spacey, and it's for folks that don't know, just Google it and you'll know why I said that. But it's kind of a admittedly sanitized look at the history of the creation of the Superman character and its history from going from comics to radio. They talk about the Max Fleischer cartoons. They talk about the 50s TV show with George Reeves and how he tragically ended up killing himself. And of course, they bring up the Christopher Reeve movies. They even mentioned, I didn't even realize this was a thing. Very briefly, there was a Superman musical. And yeah.
Oh, this is a gem. You'll have to find a link to this if it's available, in a forum or something online.
Yeah, I'm sure there is. I mean, I know the documentary itself is actually available on YouTube for free. So, a link to it will be up on the Friends Talking Nerdy page. But I will do a search for that musical because the clip that they had in the documentary was just awful. Just bad, but just one of those so bad that it's I may enjoy it after a night of buying like a new THC vape pen from the local dispensary. Fire that up a little bit. Watch the documentary, and hey, might be fun after that. But it's overall it's good. The reason I said sanitize is that they don't. Warner Brothers is the one who made this, and they own the intellectual property to Superman. They don't go into detail about the legal history of Siegel and Schuster suing them for multiple years, because there was a time up until the point of the original Superman movie where they were living destitute. I believe Jerry Siegel was even working at Marvel Comics at a job that a token job that Stan Lee gave him, because just to give him some money, because I believe they only got like $250 for selling the rights of Superman to DC, and then DC ended up kind of just shoehorning them out of everything. Luckily they were able to make it somewhat of a decent living. They got a yearly like $30,000 stipend after the Superman movie. But it doesn't go into too much detail about that. But as someone who loves that character, it's a good primer for the casual person that may not know the entire history, because it does go a little bit into like the radio show, how Superman was able to actually for real fight the Ku Klux Klan by having an FBI informant that had infiltrated the Klan, and they ended up it was because of the radio show that it ended up lowering the KKK's popularity in the country. So very good documentary. I will have the link up on the Friends Talking Nerdy page, but highly recommend folks give it a watch.
Oh, yes. I mean, I'm hoping we plan to put links to all of these, because I know most of us are spending a lot of time inside still. So really, this is a show just, hey, 10 documentaries to maybe check out. So I'll just go into my number 2, and the whole subgenre I made for this was I wanted something that kind of explored the more spiritual or religious kind of thing specifically.
Right.
Which is hard because there's a really solid documentary on Buddhism, Siddhartha Gautama, that was actually narrated by Richard Gere. But there's a docuseries that is still current that is called The Story of God with Morgan Freeman.
Oh.
And it first aired on April 3rd of 2016. I believe it's still going. I don't know if it's been COVID canceled, because it is him exploring the meaning of life, God, and many big questions in between, in an effort to understand how religion has evolved and shaped society. A different divine subject is covered in each hour-long episode, titles which include Creation, The Devil Inside Me, Afterlife, Apocalypse, and Who is God? And like, if I had to put it in my own little Tracy-ism shortness, it's like Omnism the Show.
Okay.
And I mean, to be fair, what first got me into it was it's kind of like when people listen to The Secrets of the Universe, because it's narrated by Neil deGrasse Tyson, and it's just got that lovely voice to sleep at night too.
Yeah.
And that's what happened here. We just wanted something to sleep to, and it's like, hey, Morgan Freeman won't wake me up in the middle of the night with random screaming and gun shooting or anything like that. So maybe let's do that. I'd had a few like really bad sleep nights when this happened. But he visits all sorts of places, Mayan temples. He actually goes to the Bodhi tree in India, Jerusalem's Wailing Wall. But I always thought it was really cool. He gets invited into a lot of people's homes and several sacred spaces. The one that sticks with me the most so far that I've seen is definitely the one where he gets to join the Navajo family for a sacred changing woman ceremony. My understanding of Native culture, especially around these ceremonies, is they tend to be quite private. So I thought it was really neat that he got to see this at all.
Mm-hmm.
I did discover in reviewing things for the show that what you see is actually a reenactment of the ceremony. But even with the reenactment, there were still parts they were not willing to reenact. But it's a series of interesting rituals around the idea of growing into a strong woman. So I appreciated it for that reason. And I'll share a link to this. I had found IndianCountryToday.com had done an article about him coming to visit this girl that, was the one that was becoming of age to be a woman. I thought it was cool. There was like this whole situation where they make a corn cake, and so they all like are eating it together. But it's Morgan Freeman being really chill, going around and teaching you about different cultures and different beliefs, and it definitely makes some of the religions that a lot of interest is behind making them sound scary, and it kind of takes back that veil and gives you kind of here, we're going to go meet some like Muslim people and things like that. I especially love anywhere where he visits the Buddhists, though, because they're just giggly and happy. So anytime he visits Buddhists, you're just gonna have this guy. He'll say a statement, and it will be in this cadence, and it will end with If you've ever heard the Dalai Lama speak, that's pretty much like the Buddhist cadence is joy somewhere by the end of a statement.
And I can imagine not too many Buddhists are going to be like Larry David or anything like that. But it's definitely important. It's important to learn about this stuff too, even if it's just a very cursory glance at some very basic knowledge. Just because if we don't take that time to learn about other people, we're going to be easily manipulated by. Look what happened to. You mentioned the Muslim community. Look what happened to the Muslim community after 9/11, and we're still suffering the ramifications of that just because people will not take the time to actually learn about what's going on. That does not mean you're going to become a Muslim by learning some of the basic tenets of what that religion does. But it's going to find you're going to find that you're going to be able to relate to people more by doing that. And once you do that, imagine that happiness breaks out.
Yeah, you're totally allowed to learn and not convert. And I think it is wonderful because Morgan Freeman is such a name and people love him so much. I feel like he kind of gets to use that as a cool vehicle to teach people something. Like, here's an idea that I'd like to throw out there with like learning stuff and that fear, right? Like, especially when it comes to religion and your beliefs. So my stepson was telling me that he was afraid of snakes, right? So rattlesnakes really scare him. Well, I was raised on a farm, so I calmly explained to him what my parents taught me about snakes. Snakes have no interest in biting you. Those things you hear are usually it trying to tell you to go away. But basically, the whole point of that was to sit down with him, and I said, so, hey, now that we've learned about the snakes, is it as scary as it was before we learned about it? And he goes, no. So see, you don't have to think of it as I have to change my religion or be willing to change my religion. Just learn about things just so you kind of know.
Yeah. Imagine that. Enough can't be said. But let's move on with my next one. This is a documentary that came out in 98, 99. It's called Wrestling with Shadows. And it's...
Going on a limb that it's about wrestling.
Imagine that. It was initially just meant to be a documentary showcasing the last year of Bret the Hitman Hart's employment with the WWF at the time, and it actually turned into a fascinating look at the last day that he had on the job, because you were not a wrestling fan, so you don't know why I'm kind of tiptoeing around that. The last day on Bret the Hitman Hart's job was a match at the Survivor Series against Shawn Michaels, and coming up to that match, Vince McMahon had made Bret the Hitman Hart the champion, but obviously he was about to leave, so he had to lose the championship, but he was not going to lose the championship to the person that Vince said he had to face. So what Vince McMahon ultimately did, and this was caught on a hidden mic, was tell Bret the Hitman Hart, okay, we're going to go with how you think this match is going to end, and then promptly screwed him live on pay-per-view. So it was a fascinating look at how just heartless Vince McMahon can be. We've mentioned that on the show here before, and it's just it was the first documentary that really kind of had that the wrestling industry kind of let the door open and kind of see how some of the machinations went behind the scenes and how they set stuff up, because by that time in 98, 99, Vince McMahon had already been open with the fact that it's wrestling is staged and whatnot. People got it at that point, but again, watching this would be like watching a documentary on how David Copperfield set up the illusion to make the Statue of Liberty disappear. So it really is, and it was just fascinating to see everything go down, and also fascinating to see the aftermath of because apparently they didn't capture it on film, but you saw the aftermath of when Bret punched Vince McMahon in the face, and Vince was like walking through a hallway afterwards, and you can already see like a black eye forming on his face. But just it's something I would say a person who has no interest in wrestling would still be able to get some enjoyment out of, just because of all the drama involved going on. And you're like, I have no interest, so I don't care. I'm not going to watch it.
No, I feel so bad. Like, I'm usually so open to so many documentaries and so many things. Mm-hmm. Like, maybe I would be willing to maybe do that one, like, with you, as long as I don't annoy you if I MST3K that shit. Like, but it would at least get me to watch it. Like, I couldn't do the wrestling stuff, like, if it was just me by myself. I don't think I've got the personal interest, but that's the same that goes with any documentary. If it's just not in the wheelhouse of your own interest, you probably need an assist to get through it.
Exactly. And the good thing about this documentary too, I believe it's only like 43 minutes long, so it's not like a hour and a half, 2 hour experience, but definitely one I would recommend on my list of favorites. But what's your number 3?
So my number 3, this one had to go dietary. There's so much speculation on back and forth on like what the fuck to eat. Like, we're the only animal that struggles with this, which in and of itself is fascinating and probably could be its own documentary. But that being said, I love Forks Over Knives. It was released back in 2011. The major storyline traces the journey of Dr. T. Colin Campbell, and he is a nutritional biochemist from Cornell University, and Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn, who is a former top surgeon at the world-renowned Cleveland Clinic. And if Cleveland Clinic doesn't sound familiar, you maybe don't read a lot of good medical articles, because they're one of the big names. Like, if you look up things and it says Cleveland Clinic, it's like Mayo Clinic. It's up there with being respectable. But basically, what was really cool about this one, what I loved about it, is there were these 2 doctors living 2 totally separate lives, and they each on their own paths kind of discovered their own research, and it led them to the same conclusion of chronic diseases such as like heart disease and type 2 diabetes can be prevented, and it looks like reversed, by adopting a whole food plant-based diet. So it talks a lot about the China study, which from what I'm pretty sure Campbell was involved in the China study. And that's a fascinating thing. I wouldn't recommend reading it, but it is a once-in-a-lifetime look at what the Western diet does as it goes across a culture that doesn't traditionally eat the way we do over here. And so it studied and found things like, prostate cancer went up in areas that kind of adopted a lot more of cheese, but not as much of other things. So, they cover that in a kind of not boring way. Esselstyn may sound familiar because he also has a son who kind of also has a plant-based diet that's more geared towards firefighters. Like, if you'd ever heard of like a vegan firefighter chili thing, that's him. And they were both on Game Changers, which was a more recent documentary.
Okay.
But that one actually came on fire by Joe Rogan somewhat recently, because Game Changers is newer. Joe Rogan, he kind of has a thing where he brings up the vegan diet from time to time, and kind of he's not really anti it. He does seem to be somewhat open-minded from what I hear on some topics. I don't listen to him. But I know Game Changers kind of took some shit like on his show, like one of those people were on there. But Esselstyn did appear on Game Changers, which is another good one that's more current. I like this one more than Game Changers because this one's more about health, whereas Game Changers was a little bit more being like some super ultimate human athlete, and that's not really what I'm going for in life. Like I do stuff that's outdoorsy, and I'm fairly athletic, but I just want to take care of my body. And I felt this one did it. It kind of talked about the vegan diet, which I had already been a fan of and been on and off of since college, but not in an emotionally manipulative way where it's like showing you baby animals being tortured. So if you want something that's trying to follow a little bit more medically and like good reasons for a whole food plant-based diet, or at least a vegan diet, Forks Over Knives. Another good thing about them, they've got cookbooks. I actually finally found it today. They have a quarterly magazine that comes out too with they try to help keep you, good food and stuff like that. You don't have to completely subscribe to everything. Overall, I think great documentary, and then it leads into good food, good resources, lots of free stuff online too.
Speaking of Joe Rogan, there was somebody on Twitter said it, and I thought it was funny as hell that when it comes to Joe Rogan, when there's something that only guys like, it's never a good thing. And
well, it's funny because I think I don't know if he's ever had Arnold Schwarzenegger, because I think of Arnold Schwarzenegger being another one of those kind of people that a lot of men look up to, and he was on Game Changers, so I was kind of surprised those two didn't go head to head at some point on this, because I guess he's had Miley Cyrus on now, who's recently renounced the vegan diet. But if she had problems, I kind of would suspect more of her earlier life choices than her diet, but that's just me.
For her, I just blame all those women in the early 90s that bought her father's album. I blame them for her. Thank you for unleashing that on us. I mean, she ended up doing a cover of a Nine Inch Nails song. Why? Just stop, please. Anyway.
It was like Hannah Montana was adorable, and then something happened.
Who knows, but...
but what was your next one?
All right, my next one is a documentary I saw a few months back on Hulu, and it really made me quite reflective on how made me quite reflective, and it's a documentary that we actually discussed briefly called Hillbilly.
Yes, that was a close contender for me. It was a good one.
Yeah, and what it does, it kind of details the history of the concept of hillbilly. What I mean by that is this: you find out in the course of that documentary that the vision, we'll use The Simpsons here. Cletus the slack-jawed yokel is most people's idea of when they think of a hillbilly, and that was a myth perpetuated by big business that wanted to force poor people in the Appalachian area in the South to, I forgot the specifics, but I think it has something to do with coal mining or something like that. But imagine that, a big, rich, powerful interest looking to badmouth a weak group by creating stereotypes, creating myths, and just how it shows how that myth of the ignorant hillbilly has kind of perpetuated and kind of made it to where people in my shoes, city boys like me, have essentially written off that part of the world just because of that myth, and how dangerous that is, and how speaking to the first documentary on your list, after watching that, it really made me it really opened my eyes as to how much that myth of the ignorant hillbilly has kind of affected my thinking. Not that line of thinking has affected my interpersonal relations with Southern people that I have met, obviously, but just and I got Professor Aubrey here, what do you anyway, but it's just it bothers me now how easy the ignorant hillbilly jokes come out of me. if that makes sense. And I think that's a very good thing that I'm thinking that, because again, by continuing with that mindset of the ignorant hillbilly, I'm completely disregarding the daily life struggle of people that live in those areas. And if I just had a little more empathy, and per this, what this documentary does is kind of details a life of people that live in the South, and their daily struggles that are being ignored, struggles that if people in my positions, city folk, took time to actually empathize with and try to come up with meaningful solutions that positively benefit those communities, we could be roping in a lot more people and not have to have a repeat of what we're currently dealing with in the White House, simply because the other side has found a way to speak to them better.
Exactly. And of course, no secret, I am from the South. It actually is funny how much anti-South slips out.
Mm-hmm.
And namely, okay, so people think a little less maybe, or maybe a little differently, because I don't want to accuse anybody of thinking less of me. I don't want to put thoughts in their head or whatever, words in their mouth, so to speak.
Right.
But you can tell they think differently of where you're from when you're like, oh, I didn't know you weren't from here. Where are you from? And I say, I'm from Texas. And they reply with, God, I'm sorry. Well, actually, to be fair, first it's what part, and when I say it's a small podunk town, then they apologize.
Yeah.
But to be fair, like, I've joked a lot about Texas and escaping it. But yeah, that documentary, I've seen that one. That's the first one, I think. I don't know if you've seen the other ones, but I think that's the first one we've had in common. And I still thought the funniest part was them talking about, like, that they were basically showcasing on the news, like, I can't believe there's poor white folk. Like, and how just out of nowhere they just got sent all of these ugly shoes that, like, filled a gymnasium. They're like, people just thought we needed shoes, but we just liked hanging out on our porches like that. And it's like, yeah, I mean, you don't have to get your shoes dirty. It's like muddy half the time anyways. Just play, wash your feet, and then you're done for the day.
There you go. All right, what is your next one?
Okay, so my next one, and I think we're on 4 and 5 right now, right? Our last two. And so here, my little descriptions will get less factual. The first 3 were so on such a topic, I just wanted to kind of say what had to be said about them.
Mm-hmm.
So this one is my favorite one that falls under the genre of, welp, that happened. And many people are already familiar with Tiger King, which is another one that I think would fall under this. But almost nobody has heard of a nice little 2015 ditty called Finders Keepers. And what's cool about this documentary is they never actually play the dueling banjos, but you will hear it quite naturally as the story progresses. And it's... Finders Keepers, and I always forget where it takes place, but they do have the accent. I think it's in North or South Carolina, so forgive me that one. But anywho, it follows these 2 gentlemen, and this one guy, his name was John Wood, and long story short, he was in a plane accident with his father, and his father died in this accident. Well, he lost his leg in said accident. He decided he wanted to keep this leg. I mean, obviously this man was going through a lot, so let me preface any of these decisions here. He just lost his father and was like on a lot of pain meds for just losing his own leg. So during all this, he decides, going to store this leg, going to try to keep it because I'm going to do some memorial or something because I lost my dad. He falls into drugs really hard, loses the storage unit. Along comes the other character this follows, named Shannon Wisnat. And Shannon Wisnat is a character. And he's actually the type of person, he goes and bids on the auctions of, like, closed down storage units. So he buys this storage unit with a grill in it and opens it. And I actually remember the documentary plays the 911 call where he goes, "Excuse me, I found a foot." And the 911 operator goes, "Excuse me, sir?" And he goes, "A human foot? I found a foot." So that's how it starts. And John eventually, sobers up, and he hears about who is now locally known as the Foot Man, who has T-shirts and talks about how he always knew he was going to be a star and was going to be on the TV one day. And so that's Shannon Wisnat. So understand, they both have the accent from the area they are from, but he he very much is a interesting individual. And so it follows John Wood trying to get his leg back, and Shannon Wisnat basically using a local law that they just kind of reference as finders keepers to justify keeping this man's foot because it was his claim to fame and he wanted to keep it, and it was his. I found it, it's mine.
God.
Wow. So finders keepers, I believe it was on Netflix. And just a fun side note, my ex-husband actually flew and stayed with Shannon Wisnat and wrote some of his stories. Shannon Wisnat has since passed away, just as a side note. He very bad health, but I was still married to him at the time that this happened, and I still remember some of the weird stories about him and his dogs. My now ex-husband tells dude, this dude's legit off his rocker. But so I guess there's some published stories. I guess if there's a website, I can see if I can get it. But so that's Finders Keepers. If you're looking for something to really rival Tiger King and shock all of your friends, because every time I talk about this documentary, I usually get some look of horror in response. Enjoy this one; it's very good.
All right. My next one you can find on Hulu. It is called Batman and Bill. What it is, it details an investigation that this author made. This author was doing a history on Bob Kane. Bob Kane, the public is aware, is the gentleman who came up with Batman. What people don't realize, however, and what the author ended up finding out through the course of his investigation, is that there was someone else that was working with Bob Kane. When Bob Kane came up with the idea, he went to a gentleman by the name of Bill Finger and had Bill Finger essentially flesh out the idea that Bob initially had. And Bill Finger ended up coming up with things you may have heard of in the Batman mythos. He came up with Robin. He came up with the Joker. I believe he came up with the Batmobile, and he came up with numerous other characters. And yet what happened, what you find out, is that Bob Kane, when he went to DC with the Batman idea, wrote a contract up that stated that the only person that could be listed as the creator of Batman was Bob Kane. Bill Finger ended up dying in the 70s, essentially destitute, penniless. The creator of Batman, one of the creators of Batman, died penniless, and that was a shame. But the beauty of this documentary is that the author in question wanted to fight for him. So he dug a little further, found out that and this was a weird part because I wanted to slap the author in the face for this, wake up, pal, because he found out that Bill Finger's son was a guy who lived in San Francisco in the 70s and 80s, was a homosexual, and he found out that that gentleman ended up dying from AIDS, and he thought that there was no other heir of Bill Finger's around, but then he found out that that Bill Finger's son had a daughter. And the reason I wanted to slap the author in the head was just because his logic was, well, he was gay, I didn't think he could have a kid. Come on, but anyway, the end of the documentary details how they were able to meet up with Bill Finger's granddaughter, and they ultimately were able to, after a couple of years of fighting, finally get Bill Finger's name listed as the co-creator of Batman. And it started, it was one of the few good things that happened with the Zack Snyder films, but Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice was the first time that Bill Finger was ever credited as one of the creators of Batman. So really good, heartwarming story. I mean, it's sad, everything that happened to Bill Finger, but the fact that we're able to finally celebrate his contributions to the character of Batman and what that whole world has been able to bring to the world of pop culture ever since. Very good, heartwarming story. It is on Hulu, so one I highly recommend.
Nice.
All right.
Nice. And then, so my final pick.
Yeah.
This one really didn't have a genre, but I couldn't not mention it because it's probably honestly my favorite, and it is called Wrinkles the Clown. It released October 4th of 2019. Have you seen this one by chance?
I'm familiar with the name, not familiar with what it's about. So fill us in.
Right. Okay, so you're familiar with the name, and a lot of people are, because, yeah, he went a little bit viral. I forget what year. I want to say it was 2015, but I think it was earlier than that. But he went viral. There was like, have you seen Wrinkles? And there was this video of a clown coming out from under a bed, and stories of this clown that people in Florida could hire to go and terrorize their bad kids and things like that. It's just a phone number that you can call. And so they interview Wrinkles. They actually travel with him in his little kind of shabby van thing that he lives out of, like very simple, you know. And so they actually cut it in with interviews from other individuals, and they even go into themes of clowns, like going into like theories of why they're scary and like stories of like what it related back to. And then, do you remember the clown sightings of 2016?
I think that was the year they released the first It movie, It Chapter 1. And I remember, I seem to recall it, yeah, but yeah, I think it kind of coincided with that.
See, and from what I understood, it had nothing to do with it, and it had everything to do with this Wrinkles the Clown guy, because it was these clowns that were standing out in places and like holding knives and things like that. And in Portland, they had been talking about banning clown masks, and it's weird because I remember this because I worked at a haunted house, and one of our themes was a clown theme that year, and we were really concerned that they were going to tell us we couldn't. But I still remember the wildest thing I saw from the clown sightings issues was like somebody in a clown suit like was running up behind buses and like just grabbing onto them and like just looking at people maniacally in traffic, and they couldn't catch them for a minute. But anywho, so it does go into that. It follows Wrinkles around, and I love it. It's a true testament to character work, complete with a really, it's a documentary that manages to have a twist like at some point, and I love it so much that I won't spoil it at all. So I know there's a lot of people out there that really cannot handle watching clowns, which, you know, they kind of talk about that a little bit, but if you can handle watching clowns, give it a watch. It's really good, and especially if you are into character work at all, definitely worth watching.
Oh, yeah, I remember this short little video I ended up seeing. I'll have to do a search and find it again, but it may have been right around that time, but it was like a video of like the guy and his friends in a house. There was like they turn the light off and then turn it on, and there's a clown there. They turn it off, turn it back on. It's closer, and then once it gets close enough, then the guys start beating up on the clown, and then one guy takes out a gun and starts shooting the clown and whatever.
Oh gosh!
But I mean, this is fake. It was staged, of course. It was meant for the comedy. It wasn't like a real life thing or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, I loved clowns growing up. I mean, it's like our local ABC station had a license to do their own version of the Bozo show, because I guess Bozo, it wasn't like one big national show, but essentially there was like one company that owned the IP, and like a McDonald's, you could have your own Bozo franchise, and I would watch that show every Saturday. And I remember I ran into the guy who played Bozo, and I tried to ask him about it, but he was like the weatherman for the station, but he also was Bozo, but he wouldn't tell me he was Bozo. He stuck with it. He stuck with it.
Yep, leaving it a mystery, because again, you get to that character work, and when you've really devoted to a character, like, that you make up your own rules, and that's kind of the beauty of it. You get to decide when that character comes out. Like, I had offered a character for something, and it couldn't actually be what I thought it was. I was like, oh, well, let's not introduce me as that character name. And they kind of made a joke, like, what, is this an established persona of yours? I'm like, and even in my head, even though not really established yet, I was like, hey, that's mine. Like, and that's why I don't want to give any spoilers on this at all. I'll probably find the clown video from the bus, because that burned in my head. It was creepy looking. Yeah, so that should wrap up our documentaries, right? Because you had gone first. No, you got one more. Oh,
I got one more, yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah,
I can't count. We know that.
yeah, you went 157 purple. I don't know. All right, my last one was a documentary that aired on ABC in 95, 96. It aired during my first year of college. That I spent so I was such a studious. No, I wasn't. I partied a lot, but anyway, it was the Beatles anthology. People forget that generally forget that it was a documentary because they do have an album called 3 different albums called the Beatles Anthology, which has a collection of outtakes. But I forgot how many days it was on, but it was like four to 8 different episodes, I believe. That just a very detailed history from the very beginning to, the last concert they did on top of the roof for the Let It Be sessions. One of the most detailed discussions of the history of a band I have ever seen and probably will ever see. I mean, at this point, even if you're not a fan of the Beatles, most people get the general beats of what happened in their history. The Ed Sullivan stuff, the Sgt. Pepper era, all the drugs and all that stuff. But the fact that that anthology series gave us 2 more tracks of the Beatles, the "Free as a Bird" song and "Real Love," what the surviving members ended up doing with permission from Yoko Ono. They had a couple of John Lennon demos that they reworked into particular songs, but just one heck of a good documentary. I really love that, and I'm kind of sad that it's not on a streaming platform out there. It's available on DVD. You can buy it, but it's not on a streaming platform.
See, that's what I found with I had mentioned earlier the documentary on Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha. And I had actually wanted to find that recently. Couldn't find it anywhere. And I know I had seen it on Netflix at some point. So I hope to own some of these one day just because, naturally, I'd be willing to bet all of these I watched on either Hulu or Netflix at some point.
Yeah.
But because of the nature of agreements, these are things that I'd probably want to own one day. I think the HBO one, the first one I mentioned, is still on Hulu. But hey, what's cool is both of them have been really receptive to the fact that people are home and they want to expose people to facts. So I love that there's kind of been this influx of making sure documentaries are up there, like alongside with the new ones. There's a lot. And I think now is as good a time as any to be willing to explore some topics and come out of it knowing with that secure sense that you're allowed to feel the same when you are done, folks. It is okay.
Yep. All right. With that, we are going to transition to our album review of the week. For this week's choice, we had a poll up on Twitter. We actually had 45 people end up voting on it. Most popular poll to date. And the choices that we had was Appetite for Destruction from Guns N' Roses. We had Old Waylon from Waylon Jennings. We had Let's Get It On from Marvin Gaye. And I forgot the name of the album from A Tribe Called Quest. But Tribe Called Quest's most famous album. Welcome to the Appetite for Destruction ended up winning from Guns N' Roses. So you had a chance to listen to it this week. What are your overall thoughts?
Well, I mean, I like the album. I would totally just listen to this if it was just, yeah, sure, I would totally listen to that album, like from beginning to end. I don't think there's really a bad song in here. Is it stuff that I listen to on the regular? No. Mm-hmm. I do like that the 2 songs I'm pretty sure almost everybody's heard. They were covered by that favorite cover band of mine, Postmodern Jukebox, and they're both really good tunes as well. So, anytime I listen to the originals, I think of those, and I really love that band. So I don't mind being taken back there. But big shocker, a lot of my comments were going to be, I really like the guitar. So I'm going to try not to say that as much, because they were known for their guitar work. So of course it's going to be beautiful throughout it.
Yeah,
What
and
about you?
kind of in the same boat. I mean, this was 87, 88 was the first time I, as a kid, really started taking a big interest in music. So, apart from the Rolling Stones in the past, I just, if music was on, I listened to it, I enjoyed it, but I didn't dig deep and try and learn more about the band. But then this album hit, and 87, 88 on MTV, Guns N' Roses was all over the place, and I mean, what a great time to be alive musically. Just hearing a lot of this, a lot of these tracks when they first came out, and listening to it now, I do have my opinion changed somewhat on based on the content of the stories some of these songs tell. But overall, I mean, the big tracks. There's a reason that this is on most people's Mount Rushmore of greatest rock albums ever made, because it is. It just is. I will have
It
my
rocks.
yeah. I will have my criticisms along the way, but everybody at some point has listened to at least one song from this album. I guarantee it. So let's go through it track by track. Let's do it.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's do it. So,
track number one of the most iconic opening tracks in rock music history. Welcome to the Jungle. What were your thoughts?
my only thought with this song is knees. Like,
you nailed it.
I mean, it's Welcome to the Jungle, so it's fun. I mean, I still think it's funny that even as an adult, the moaning halfway through still makes me feel like prepubescent awkward. Like, because the front part, you're like, I'm not supposed to understand what those sounds are.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Any other thoughts on it, or?
Well, I mean, it's Welcome to the Jungle. It's been played in grocery stores and movie soundtracks alike. So it's a classic, and it is obviously one of the ones that they did a cover of on Postmodern Jukebox. But
yeah. Well, the notes I had. What a hell of a way to open an album. The song can be overplayed today, but that does not take away from just how ferocious this song is. I mean, the guitar work from Slash, top notch, and I'm going to be in the same boat as you, because, I mean, Slash and Joe Perry were like my two big guitar heroes at that particular age. So, Slash could play a guitar solo to my conversation right now, and it would probably, be a very good song at that point, just because of his guitar work. But it's just everything about it. The where you are, you're in the jungle, baby. That part, I love how it ratcheted up, and I think too it captures the feeling quite well of what it's like for somebody from a smaller town to go to a much bigger town.
Yeah.
I mean, Grand Rapids, Michigan, not the biggest place in the world, but it's not exactly a one-road Main Street type of town. But once I moved to Sacramento and then moved out to Portland, comparing the two, I mean, it felt like the big city. I felt like, I needed to stick a straw coming out of my mouth, chewing on it, while I explore the big old city,
You and me both. I mean, it's no secret I escaped the country and eventually made my way up here. So living in a city is very eye-opening. And, you have to also realize when the soundtrack was put together, I don't think they knew that was going to be such a hit song. So to be able to start off with something that got to be, I mean, this isn't like a reordering or anything. Do you know if it happens to be the original order?
Of the album, yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
this is track one, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, okay, there we go. Because it's not like nowadays where a song comes out and you've heard it for like a month ad nauseum on the radio before the CD even releases anywhere. So, back then, for this to be the front song and then for it to get so big probably meant more back in the day than it would now.
Yeah. And too, the first track on a debut album for a band you haven't heard of, that first track has to be great to be able to hook a listener in. And my God, this is an absolute classic. I mean, if there is a Mount Rushmore of individual great rock and roll songs, this is going to be on a lot of people's list. So, next track, It's So Easy. What'd you think?
So the notes that I have is, this is the song you listen to, like, cruising on your motorcycle with, like, a cigarette hanging out of your mouth. Like, there's something about it that gave me that essence, which is, like, I would listen to it if I were trying to fantasizing about being a badass on my scooter. Like, I'd have a helmet instead of a cigarette and going, like, 10 miles an hour instead of, 50. So I would try to do the lame version of the feeling the song was going for. But I also have the note, like, there was a significant sound change just after the chorus, like, where it slows down for a minute and then it seamlessly ramps back up to the original tempo. And there was something about that I really liked. And just kind of overall with the album anyways, there's always a little bit of difference between them. And I felt like this was kind of that little subtle difference that made this song set apart from all the other ones on it.
Yeah, this one I wasn't a big fan of. I didn't care for Axl's vocal delivery, and this is a little too derivative of Aerosmith for my taste. Because if you not 80s and 90s Aerosmith, 70s Aerosmith, when they were heavy into the drugs, their music was a lot darker than what people think of when they think of Aerosmith. And Guns N' Roses was heavily, you could tell they were heavily influenced by them. Guitar work, of course, was great. Like I said, I mean, you could put Slash on a bad album and it'll sound good. It just, more than anything, it felt like a throwaway song. And also, the song is, I guess it was written by Axl, and it's about how a person would feel if you had a bunch of, in his case, it was about being able to get any woman he wanted because they could throw themselves at him, and how that got boring. And it's just like, okay, I get it. That is a mood, but it's just like, come on, you could be a little more deeper.
It's kind of an odd following too. Like when you consider, like, we just had Welcome to the Jungle, like Welcome to the City, and it's like, I'm already bored with the Snatch. Like song 1, Welcome to the City, to song 2, I'm already bored with the Talent.
Yeah. Want to go back? I don't know, but anyway, so
go back to the country. All right. Girls are missing teeth. Sorry, I'll stop.
No worries. Our next track, Night Train. What were your thoughts?
This one, I put that I like the percussion because I feel like they dug some of the stuff out of the percussion drawer that nobody really uses as much. I have solid use of wood blocks. I don't usually find myself jamming to wood blocks, but I did notice as I was kind of bobbing my head, I was picking up on that back instrument. I was like, oh, okay, so they brought out the wood blocks. That's kind of cool. That's what I've got. Also, I really like the exit with the guitar.
Yeah.
It just it almost felt like the song was going to happen again somehow, or it was going to somehow transition into another one. But they kind of did this nice little and then just let it exit out. I think this was the one I almost wanted to write. It was almost like if you could play the guitar while simultaneously putting both fingers, both hands, middle finger up while walking backwards out the door. That guitar exit felt like that.
Okay.
I have a weird way of visualizing music, I guess. I don't know.
That's not too weird. But for me, I put a song about cheap booze because it is. Night Train is in the same class of alcohol as your Boone's Farm or your Four Loko type of deal. It's the type of drink that when you want to get drunk but you only got $5, you're going to get something like this. This is similar to Kiss. Kiss had a song on their first album called Cold Gin. Same type of thing, and just not for me. The music's solid, but the lyrics I just didn't care for. I did love the guitar solo. I did notice too how the title of the song was just uttered way too often, and just it got annoying for me.
Yeah, that kind of boring, repetitive, not there's some songs on here where the repetitiveness is something you almost rejoice in. You even think of the sha-na-na-na-na-na-na. there's something about that you like, and there's one I know later that there was like a chorus that's like it got repetitive, but I liked it. This one, I don't think they pulled that off.
Yeah.
But they did pull off that if a guitar could give the middle finger while walking out of the room, they pulled that one off.
I mean, it is Slash, one of the most badass guitar players ever, so yeah, he can do that. But all right, with that, we'll go to our next one. Out to Get Me. What'd you think?
Out to Get Me. I really found myself strong head bobber at the beginning, but I always get to the point where if I'm listening to too much of this in a row, I get a little tired of the right like level of the, and I know that's an iconic sound to them, honestly, like obviously, but it very much felt like this would be that song. You would know it was them if you did not know it was them because of the way that they talk. But I did like the, 'cause I'm innocent, so you can suck me. I found myself like really like it. I was like, yeah, I like that part. And then at the very end, it was kind of funny to me because, like I said, I felt like the guitar was giving the middle finger on the way out in the prior song, but this one I felt like they kind of had that attitude. It's like, take that one to the heart, like right at the end, like kind of. So he did the same thing but verbally, and then just end.
That I made a note about that particular line. I mean, I love corny stuff. I love cheap, silly jokes, but just sometimes corny can be done wrong, and this is just way too corny for me. I mean, I could picture my mother singing something like that. You know, the way it's your mother.
Your
level
mother would
corny.
say, "I'm innocent, so you can suck me."
No, not that line.
The later line. Sorry, my bad. I just thought your mother like maybe was a sailor or German or something.
No, she was a bartender. She was she was no angel. Let's put it that way. But the notes I had for the song, loved the riff that opens it up, but the vocals and the lyrics. I mean, because Axl wrote this, he's not the most calm individual. I guess these days he's a lot better. Everybody grows calmer with age or something like that. But he's had a lot of run-ins with the law, and this song was essentially his big machismo moment. His big, putting the middle finger up to, the cops or whatever, and just It really didn't do anything for me. The only saving grace, of course, again, would be the music. You know, you have Slash playing the guitar. It's going to be enjoyable just for that. But just the Axl part of the song, meh.
Is that sound that I'm associating vocally? That right? Like, is that Axl? Okay, so now
Well, it's. I mean, there's a number of people that do that. Like David Lee Roth was, "All right, are you ready to rock?" You know, type of deal. So.
Right, but in these songs, that's Axl that I'm hearing. I'm assuming. So
yes.
That's why, because this is like the second one that I've kind of felt that I was like, oh, okay, not my favorite vocally. So,
yeah.
So Axl running songs tend not to be my favorite vocally. Apparently, is what I'm learning.
Yeah. Actually, I did learn that in high school, in the choir, Axl taught himself how to sing in 3 different octaves just to fuck with the choir teacher.
Solid.
Yeah. Anyway, let's move on to the next song.
That.
Mr. Brownstone. What did you think?
I've got to know, like, I like the guitar. I mean, on this one and all of them, really, because this was, like I mentioned at the beginning, they're good guitar work, solid guitar work on all of them. Mm-hmm. But this was the one here where there was a repetitive nature where you just heard little a lot. And there was something about that I caught myself just like little, like just that part and like looking up the words and just kind of really enjoying that repetitiveness. So this is one where I think they made it successfully, at least to me, successfully catchy repetition, not just unsuccessful, annoying repetition.
Agreed with you there. The song itself is about heroin. Brownstone is apparently slang for heroin. I love the wordplay. Like, I used to do a little, but a little wouldn't do it, so a little got more and more. I mean, just...
Yeah, there we go. I was just, like, in my head because I didn't catch all the words in between it, like, so I was, like, kid-style doing it of, like, little. Yeah,
I mean, it's... the song itself is not a classic, but the Axl's delivery on this is really good. And what I could see this most importantly is being something that could essentially lift the spirits of a crowd. I mean, it would be interesting to kind of see video of how crowds would react to this being played live, because I think this is one that could get people up and moving around, up and jamming. So not a classic again, but just not a bad song either. Just great to have in the background. This is enjoyable too for one of those long highway rides. Just having something that kind of keep it bouncing, keep your energy up while you're driving.
Yeah.
All right.
Which honestly, I mean, for driving, it even bleeds in well to the next song, right? Because
perfect. Great segue.
I've personally jammed out.
Paradise City. What did you think?
Yep. I mean, it is a classic. Even if you've never heard it on the radio, you've probably caught it on one of 100 movies it's been used in. But it's a good song. It's a good cruising music. I'd repeat it. I'm pretty sure this is one of those songs I've gotten stuck in my head and went, okay, YouTube, I'm going to listen to this song because I need it out of my brain meat. I do have like that kind of dumb first memory of it. So outside of like hearing it in TV and such, I as a young Southern Christian, went to a summer camp, and I remember I had a team captain who really liked Wang Chung.
Oh,
and
God.
even named us, our team name was Wang Chung, and for some reason he picked this song to like make our team theme song, and we sang like "Take Me Down to the Wang Chung City." so it was really funny like later hearing the song, because I was a kid, so I didn't know this was an actual song. I thought like this was just something this dude made up.
He's
and
so
then
deep.
I hear it later. And so I hear it later, and I'm like, I remember as a child, my first thought going, they stole this song from that nice man from my camp. But then, I learned how the world worked and that he just covered it.
Yeah. Oh, me. I like anybody in the 80s that came across this song thanks to the video. Funny enough, the gentleman who came up with the wonderful theme song we have for our show, Christopher Lazarek, he knows somebody that is in that video. There's a shot in the video, like about 30 to 45 seconds into it, where you see a man and a woman kissing in the crowd. He knows that woman that was kissing the guy in the video. I guess she had big hair. I even tried to invite her on the show at one point, but that did not work out, obviously. But still, just an absolute classic. I mean, it's one of their best songs, and also one of the best rock songs ever made. Gives you the feeling of a perfect summer day. I love when the song goes into overdrive near the end of the song. Just so much intensity. It's very much metal at that point, but it's melodic too, so that people that are enjoying Guns N' Roses for the pop elements can enjoy it as well. Just all around, just an absolute classic. This is just one of the best rock songs ever made, in my opinion.
Yes, and even though like it's a little bit more repetitive, the chorus kind of overlaps a bit, it's definitely one of the most successful like classic songs of nailing a repetitive thing that just it gets stuck in your head, and it's an earworm, but not an annoying earworm. So few examples of that across musical history, but I think Paradise City is one of those good earworms.
Good earworm, yes. Not like Never Gonna Give You Up from Rick Astley. That's a bad earworm. Anyway, let's move on to our next track. My Michelle. What'd you think?
I really liked the chill intro, and then I liked that it lasts just long enough that you think it's going to be a calmer song, but then wait, it's not. And then the guitar kicks in and kind of like slaps you in the face with, then your daddy works in a porno. like, oh, okay, not a chill song, got it. But I also really like the thing that kind of made this one stand out a little bit was I felt more of that bass slapping feel. The bass slapping feel on this one, like the bass kind of stood out a little bit more, and I don't feel like a lot of their songs features bass, right. So it was kind of nice to kind of hear that going in the background.
Actually learned something interesting about this song. It's actually about somebody. Axl wrote it for a friend of
Is it
his.
Michelle?
Imagine that, yeah. Apparently, they were in a car listening to the song "Your Song" from Elton John, and she just made a comment that she would love it if somebody wrote a song about her. And Axl wrote this. He initially was going for a more traditional upbeat type of love song, but ultimately, but he was just friends with her, didn't want to go in that direction, so he wrote an honest song about her life. So when it comes to talking about her father being a porn producer, her father was a porn producer, this actual woman, and ended up having some drug issues as well. But I love the history on that, but didn't do much to make me really enjoy the song. Just hearing the story of her life is just like, that's pretty fucked up. I don't want to rock out to that so much. I just want to
Yeah,
make her some
it's like this one
cocoa.
would have been more appropriate almost if they had kept that chill tone to it
Hmm.
and let it be the one kind of chill song on an album. And I think like maybe if they existed today, that would have been more of the feel to it. But I mean, they were rock, right? Like I think they definitely went for a sound. Um, Not a lot of trying to branch out and be like diverse as much. The diversity is more like in their musical style rather than trying to incorporate a lot of different styles.
Well, I
I
think
think that makes sense. Like,
Yeah, I mean, for me, Guns N' Roses was the first domino that helped topple 80s pop metal bands like Motley Crue and Poison, just because Guns N' Roses brought back an honesty to the rock music that in the 80s was kind of really going away, because rock music being as popular as it was at the time, a lot of music executives had their hands in the pot, and they made sure that the artists in question were a lot more polished than what this music really deserves. So I do like, yeah. Anyway, let's move on to the next track. Think About You. What did you think?
I don't have much on this one other than it was more percussion focused,
Hmm.
which obviously would stand out because it's not guitar. So that was really all I've got on that one. I didn't spend a lot of time on the words with these guys, just because it would have involved like reading every single song, and it goes into a little bit of their sound quality. I have a little bit of rough time with some of their words, but what's great is you've really been on with the words of the songs, and you've taught me so much so far. So, what did you think of Think About You?
I thought this was probably the worst track on the album. For me, it's just mediocre. It just sounds like a song that someone who's never listened to a rock band before would make based on what they think a rock song should sound like. And it just was just mediocre and average. And I mean, the guitar work, of course, was good. I mean, if you're going to listen to it at all, listen to it for the guitar work. But just everything else, it seemed like that they did not put too much effort into this. It's just too formulaic, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like maybe they let one of the kids write the song, or it's like, yeah, sure, little Timmy, you can play the drums.
Yeah, we need one more song, and we only got 5 minutes before we can record. What can you do? Well, hey, but yeah, just
They didn't want to let him use wood blocks again. Too soon for wood blocks.
something like that. The little Timmy hurt himself, but all right. But we go from the worst track on the album to one of the best tracks on the album, "Sweet Child of Mine." What do you think?
Yes, definitely another iconic one. Like, particularly, I still think it stands for this song, and someone's willing to convince me otherwise, but best guitar solo.
One of the best, yeah.
I mean, yeah, like, it's one of the guitar solos. I think if you honestly just played the guitar solo by itself, most people would go, that's Sweet Child of Mine, and not really realize that they know the guitar solo from Sweet Child of Mine. Does that make sense? Like, if you listen to just that snippet, and I think that's why I come from that place of, I think it's the best guitar solo to date, because it is that well known and not many are.
Yeah, and it takes a special kind of guitarist to have a sound that you just hear like a couple of seconds of a particular song, and you know who it is. I mean, you got Slash, of course, with that particular sound. I mean, Joe Perry from Aerosmith is another one. Carlos Santana is another person that has a very distinctive sound that you know who it is. The lyrics are kind of on the schmaltzy side, but to your point, the guitar has a lot of edge to it, which you know, brings a lot to the song. This song too, when you're 12 years old and you're first getting all those little feelings, in my case for the young ladies in my class when I'm 12 and whatnot, this song can be seem like it's very, very deep. And you know, I think back to a lot of crushes I had back in my elementary school days, that I would just listen to this song and just think longingly of you know, Little Miss X or Little Miss Y, and you know, just, oh, someday I'll date her, yay, type of deal. But and go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna, is Sweet Child of Mine like about a romantic thing?
Yes, Sweet Child of Mine, Axl wrote that for his girlfriend at the time, Erin Everly. Erin Everly is the daughter of, I forget which one, but you're familiar with the Everly brothers.
Yes.
That's the daughter of one of the Everly brothers. So, yeah, he ended up writing that for her. And like I said, the lyrics, it's it's deep if you're a certain age. In my 40s now, it's not that deep anymore, but it reminds me a lot of like the Kevin Smith film Chasing Amy, in the fact that it captures what it feels like to be, in Axl Rose's case, in your early 20s and trying to express yourself, because you think you're deep, you think you're just nuanced and everything, but then you listen back like 20, 30 years later and you're just like, oh God, I was so damn ignorant. But just, again, despite the criticisms, this is a classic. You cannot go wrong.
Yes, classically covered.
Exactly. Next track, though, You're Crazy. What did you think?
I'm in this album and I don't like it. No, I'm just kidding. It was a good sound. It didn't really, nothing about it stood out particularly to me. I did say that I feel like this would be a music video where it's mostly just different shots of a girl in cut-off shorts with a mysterious light somehow always twinkling behind her hair that's blowing behind a giant fan. But, and maybe she might be the crazy one, maybe she's not. But that's pretty much the notes I had on. I liked the sound of it. But, it, you know, I don't feel like it stood out any more than most of the other songs on the album.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of in the same boat here. I put that a nice, fast-paced track that picks up the tempo. Not my favorite, but I could also see this being a great song live. You know, something that could kind of get the audience up and energized. But I more than anything, I think I would probably have a different opinion of this song if the track placement was just a little different. Coming off of Sweet Child of Mine, it's kind of jarring. And it's not as good as Sweet Child of Mine, so it's just like coming right after one of the greatest rock songs ever made is tough, and this did not live up to it, and it was going to be tough order for anything that came after the previous track. So it's not bad, but it's quickly forgettable.
Yes, very, very forgettable after Sweet Child of Mine. And really, after having, there's only two left, but ideally, I wonder in hindsight if they could have ended it with Sweet Child of Mine. Because, yeah, hard to follow, and it even kind of had that tempo to kind of send you off with. So maybe it was a little bit because I felt like the album was done at this point. Maybe it's just bad placement, but I'm with you. Unremarkable song, number 10.
Yeah. And also, too, they had, I didn't realize this, but they had a couple of songs in the bank already that they did not release on this album, but they released on Use Your Illusion. They had Don't Cry and November Rain ready to go, but they didn't release it. And I thought that, why not have like Don't Cry after Sweet Child of Mine? I think it might have been it might have. I mean, being that they were both similar in tempo, I think it might have been an easier transition. But anyway, let's move on to the next one. Anything Goes. What'd you think?
It was another one where I feel like they kind of reached to the back of the percussion closet. They got the, I could go and point it out, but I could not describe it in Google well enough to get the name of the flippin' instrument. But it's the little grating sound. It almost is kind of like a washboard, but it's small and it's all wooden, so it's kind of that rattle.
Yeah.
And then I could have sworn it. The other thing I heard was it's a hand instrument that you kind of whirl around, and it does a slightly different sound.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was trying to think of the names of them, couldn't. But I like that they pulled those back out. I did have a note here, a little repetitive on the My Way, Your Way, Anything Goes tonight, but I kind of liked it, even though it was a little grating. And the tempo change near the end was a fun little way to end it, too. It kind of came out of nowhere, but I liked it.
Yeah, I mean, the notes I had, I mean, it's a song about fucking. That's really all it is. Just, you know.
So it kind of came out of nowhere, but I liked it.
Yeah, and for me, it's mediocre at best. And, in terms of the subject of the song, I don't mind songs that kind of celebrate that feeling that two or more people can get these days, to where they just decide, hey, let's fuck. Sometimes those can be good songs. This one was just, I mean, it had some. I mean, to your point, it did have some good elements. It's not a bad song, but forgettable. And yeah. More than anything, that's probably the biggest crime on this album, being forgettable. And but yeah, let's move on to the last one, and this has an interesting story. Rocket Queen, want to hear your thoughts first?
Well, I'll be excited to hear the story because my notes are very brief. I like that they ended the album with two of my favorite things: a really good drum solo and a slapping bass. Like, that was kind of featured really heavily, which was nice because it made this song definitely stand out from the others. However, there was a moment near the end of the intro that I was like, is this a continuation of Paradise City? Like, it almost sounds super similar to part of the music there, and you're nodding, so I'm hoping this has something to do, or maybe you just felt that way too. But yeah, I was like, is this just like a weird revamp of Paradise City while they like bow out? But no, it was not.
Yeah, no, I just nodded my head like, oh. It wasn't in agreeing anything like that. But this song is unique. Now, you may have noticed about halfway through the song, there's an interesting solo that they have.
Okay, yeah, that was where I was like, okay, not Paradise City. Like, definitely not going that route. So
no.
Go into the solo, though, yeah.
Yeah, the solo is... live sex that Axl recorded with him and somebody else. Now, the story is this, though, and it's kind of sad, and it makes you not like Axl Rose, because the girl in question that he's having sex with is the drummer's girlfriend. She had caught the drummer having sex with somebody else, so she decided to get back at him by having sex with Axl Rose, and Axl, for this particular song, was insistent that he wanted sex in the song. So they set up a studio, and the studio engineers recorded him and this woman having sex, and that was the solo for this particular song. And this and the drummer did not realize this until the album was released, which led to him getting a major case of depression, which led to his drug use quadrupling, and which led to him ultimately getting fired from the band and having to this day to deal with the effects of substance abuse. So thanks, Axl.
Ooh, leaving it on a positive note, you know.
Yeah.
Jesus, harsh.
Yeah, as far as the song itself, another one that just, I mean, I question, because with the amount of songs that they had in On Hold already, like Don't Cry, November Rain, that song from Terminator that they used in Terminator 2, Judgment Day, You Could Be Mine, that was ready to go. why couldn't they end the album with "You Could Be Mine"? I mean, they could have ended it with something that was better than Rocket Queen, and if they want to write an ode to groupies, great. Groupies are not bad. They got their own little subculture that's fascinating, and but just. This, along with what Axl did with the drummer's girlfriend, was just like, let's find a way to end this album on the most awkward way possible, and he did. So thank you, Axl.
Yeah, a testament to douchery that will last throughout time. And it's like, really, I almost feel like you could have just stopped this album after Sweet Child of Mine and not really missed anything. Like, I could have totally gone without You're Crazy, Anything Goes, and Rocket Queen, and I think it would have been a better sound to kind of piece out to.
Yep. A little more, I think, that having Sweet Child of Mine as the very last track on the album probably, because, I mean, to what I said earlier, I mean, anything following Sweet Child of Mine would instantly be compared to that particular song. So why not just kind of bookend the album with two of your three greatest songs? And
especially the first one being so high energy and get you into it. And Sweet Child of Mine, like just the way that like the way that the guitar plays out in the end. If that's not I love you, Seattle, good night. Like, I don't know what is. You know what I mean? Like, like you can totally just end it there and ditch the last three. So I guess if you really want to listen to this album from beginning to end, you could stop it at 9 and be happy. But you'll miss those bonus instruments from Anything Goes if you really care about missing out on that.
But anyway, that was Appetite for Destruction. Again, one of the best rock albums ever made, and rightfully so. Even though we offered some very healthy critiques of a number of the songs on the album, it's still very much a classic. And if you like rock music, you've had to have listened to it at least once. I mean, it's one of those must-listen albums. You have to. All right, so any hint at what we could be listening at next time with your choice?
Oh gosh, I know we had talked about another top 5. What was it? It was documentaries, and it was another. I don't have it written anymore.
Well, another album choice.
Oh, album choices. I kind of wanted to see if we can come up with another poll. I kind of like this whole engaging listeners. I hear that's a good thing to do. So why don't we spitball something?
We can definitely do that. Yeah, and we'll definitely be back next week with another top 5 favorite as well. We'll of course discuss what that will be, but that's it for another week. Do you have anything going on this week you want to promote?
Actually, I should say that the Scare Fair, Clackamas County Scare Fair, is scheduled to continue on. It is not open this first weekend anymore, but tickets are live. I have been sharing that link, but I will go ahead and get the Scare Fair tickets link. So the haunted house that I work with, Fearlandia, does have a setup, as well as many of the local favorites. Davis Graveyard, I believe, is one of them, as well as Creatures of the Night, which is based out of Sandy. But there are several in the area that came together, and we encourage you guys to come check out what's going on. So I'll share that with you to put on there.
Yeah, and you definitely want to support the arts at a time like this, especially, arts that are not owned by the Disney Corporation, because everybody's struggling. And if you have the ability, even if it's something as simple as a retweet, because if you can't financially support an artist, a retweet to spreading the word could get a piece of art in the hands of somebody that could financially help. So you definitely want to do that. And also, to your point, you've mentioned on the show before, 2020 is majorly fucked up as it is, and we don't want Halloween to go by the wayside. So we're going to have to improvise this year, but we want to do what we can to keep the scares coming.
Exactly, and they're trying to be cool about it. So actually, if you and people that you live with, or if you do have like a quarantine type situation with a friend, for the low price of $20, you can fit a car full, and they just say can legally fit in the car. So don't try to pull anything dumb and stuff like 10 people in a Mazda Miata. Like,
Clown
go
car.
through, fill your car, $20, and if you are by yourself, it's just $11. Like, they're trying to be cool about it. And it is a stay in your car event, so if you're high risk, this should be relatively friendly for you to go to. So something that our high risk folks out there should, be able to enjoy with some safety.
Nice. All right, and myself, I will, of course, like I mentioned, be on our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/ftnerdy, playing video games. Feel free to stop on by and just simply chat. If anybody does show up for the chat, I will do what I can to actually interact and not be like, hey, But anyway, that does it for another week. So we thank you all for listening to Friends Talking Nerdy. And remember...
It's such a good feeling to know you're alive. It's such a happy feeling. You're growing inside, and when you wake up ready to say, I think I'll make a snappy new day. It's such a good feeling, a very good feeling. The feeling that I'll be back when the day is new. And I'll have more ideas for you. And you'll have things you'll want to talk about. I will too. You always make each day such a special day. You know how? By just your being you. Only one person in the whole world like you. That's you yourself. I'll be back next time. Bye-bye.
Subscribe to Friends Talking Nerdy on iTunes, the Google Play Music Store, as well as Spotify. Remember to support Friends Talking Nerdy on Patreon. Goodbye, darling.